Welcome back. At the time of recording this video, we're almost 1,500 subscribers on this channel, and I wanted to thank you, each one of you, for making this possible. And maybe by the time the video comes out, we already passed that mark. But in general, it doesn't really matter too much. Thank you to each one of you for making this possible. I did not expect it, and I'm grateful for that. Now, enough with it. Going back to the 10-24, I had a hit and miss relationship with this lens because I owned the previous version, the non-weather sealed version, and despite the initial wow factor that when I got it I said, whoa, that's nice, and it was nice, at least the focal range was nice, but I couldn't get consistency in the result that I was getting from this lens. So I ended up selling that lens because I wasn't super satisfied with it, and got the 12mm Zeiss. But then I started to shoot videos, and having a stabilized lens started to be a need for me, and that therefore I've always thought about, hey, maybe I'm gonna get a new copy of that lens. Maybe mine was not that good, but in the back of my mind I couldn't pull the trigger on that. So what I ended up doing was sticking with the 12mm Zeiss, and then the new version of the 10-24 came out. Now, I know the optical formula is the same, so I decided to give it another try because I thought my previous version was probably a lemon, so let's try it again. Now it's weather sealed, it's got a few improvements that make sense, so let's give it a try. And from the moment I got that lens, this lens, I was definitely a lot more satisfied than I was with the previous version. My copy of the previous version, I want to highlight that because everybody was super excited about the lens, and were super satisfied about it, so I thought I was the only one who had a bad copy. I've been using this lens for months now in every possible scenarios, and I think I can finally tell you whether this is a good lens or not. Before talking to you about the lens, let me show you a few pictures that I took during my months with this lens, because I think those are going to capture your attention. I'm going to explain you why I changed my mind on this lens. Let's talk about the build quality of this lens, and let me start with a little bit of a sad story. After months of use, I dropped it while vlogging. I dropped it with my X-T4 attached to it, and it was about 1 meter high. And after a few seconds of terror in my face, I realized that the lens, despite having some dent on it, didn't break a sweat. So the build quality is really good. It's a metal barrel. You see, it's got some kind of internal zooming, meaning that the lens doesn't extend while zooming, but the inner focusing element moves. So it's almost internal zoom because there's the chance for dust to get in. The size is right for the type of lens that it is. It's hard to build super wide lenses that are super compact, especially if we're talking about zoom with autofocus, a good stabilization and all of that. So can't complain about that. The zooming ring is well dampened. I feel like I can easily get exactly what I want without fiddling too much, while on the other side, I think that the aperture ring is a little bit loose. See, it moves a little bit too easy, and I would have loved for it to be a little bit stiffer, especially the clicks between one setting and another. They're really easy. They're really easy to move. But again, not a big deal. And at the same time, I find that the focusing ring, the one that you see over here, sometimes it feels like it's a little bit small because, especially when you're wearing gloves, it's cold outside and maybe it's dark. And you manual focusing, sometimes you try to manual focus and you hit the zoom ring rather than the manual focusing. So again, minor things, I'm nitpicking here, but I would have loved for it to be a little bit bigger and a little bit more separated from the zooming ring. Now, compared to the previous version, there's a few things that are worth being mentioned. One, they finally put the aperture marks on the barrel, which were not there in the previous version, which is stupid because it's an F4 constant aperture ring, even the previous one. So why not put it there? I don't know. They also moved to the new locking mechanism for the aperture ring. You see over here the red thing to prevent accidental moving on that. And they made it also a little bit lighter, 25 grams lighter than the previous one. And the autofocus is really good, but the previous one was good as well. And they also weather sealed it, which is a great addition because a lens like this is made to shoot in the elements. While I like the stabilization, and we'll talk about it later, I would love for me to be able, with a simple switch, to turn the stabilization off. Again, Fuji moved towards this decision of removing the physical switches, and I should get over it. But again, I still keep complaining about it because to me it doesn't make too much sense. That being said, the lens is built really well. It matches perfectly the X-T4. It works perfectly as far as size. It feels really well balanced. Of course, with smaller cameras such as the XE4, it feels front heavy. But I mean, that camera is so lightweight that and so compact that it would be expected. Speaking of autofocus, I can only say that the autofocus is super fast, is super silent, and is reliable the vast majority of time. I would say 100% of the time is reliable in stills, while I have some concerns in video, which we're gonna talk about it a little bit later. But for stills, is super good. Never missed a shot because of the autofocusing. When it comes to manual focusing, it is fly-by-wire manual focusing like all the new Fuji lenses. This means that it may be complicated to focus precisely, especially let's say at infinite if you're shooting in very low light, because in that scenario all the manual focusing aids may not work properly, and you may want to have a real connection between the focusing ring and the focusing mechanism. Again, it's not part of it, but I felt that this works better than other Fuji lenses in this regard. So I didn't have any real issue while manual focusing. Speaking of image quality, a super wide angle lens like this, fairly compact and with constant aperture, are quite a challenge to design and build. So it will always be a compromise. It will never be as good as a dedicated prime lens. But this lens, the 20-24, doesn't disappoint at all. Of course, at the two extremes, 10 millimeters and 24 millimeters, the sharpness is a little bit less than in the middle of the zooming ring, but that we're talking negligible differences. But the overall performance is the same. F4 is sharp already in the center, while corners are a little bit behind, and they get better at 5.6, where also the center of the frame gets very sharp. As you move towards closing the aperture, so f8, f11, the lens keeps improving a little bit in the corners, while the center is already reached its best at 5.6, and then the fraction starts to kick in to become really visible at f22, making it a little bit unusable. And I'll show you this right now. So overall, it's not a perfect lens when it comes to image quality, especially for sharpness, but it's very good. Vignetting is also well controlled. You can see some at f4 throughout the zooming range, but then when you're f6, it's basically gone, and even at f4, it's nothing to write home about. It's normal vignetting that you would get with every zoom lens. Also, chromatic aberration is not bad at all. I feel it is really well controlled. I didn't see that much even when I was shooting against very high contrast areas. So very well done there. Also, the sun stars are decent. You need to get pretty close with aperture ring, so you need to get to f8, f11 to get some, and then it gets better at f16, but then diffraction kicks in. At f22, you get a very defined sun star, but at the same time, you're losing all the sharpness. So it's not the best lens when it comes to sun stars. And also, what I realized is when you're shooting with the sun in front of the frame, and this is the real flaw of this lens, it can't handle the sun in the frame that much. If it's outside the frame and you shade it, it's fine. The lens hood does its job, and even if it doesn't, you can use your hand to cover where the lens hood doesn't. But if the sun is in the frame, you get a wild array of ghosting and flares and all of that. So be aware of it. If it's your style of shooting, you may want to look elsewhere, because this lens doesn't handle sun in the shot too much. The distortion is electronically controlled, like all the lenses, right? Like nowadays. But if you remove all the distortion correction at 10 millimeters, the barrel distortion is really high. But again, at the end of the day, you're shooting and you're using the picture already corrected. So it's something I would not worry about too much. Speaking of stabilization, as already mentioned, I could get great results, especially using it with the X-T4, so OIS plus IBIS, because I could shoot like very slow shutter speed without any issue with very sharp pictures. So this lens, again, together with the X-T4, but that's how I use it, gives you really good result. And even with the X-E4, I tried a couple of test shots. The 3.5 stops that Fuji is claiming, I would say they're pretty accurate. You can get a lot out of this lens stabilization system. This is a little bit different for video, and we're going to get to it in a second. Now, video is the main reason why I got this lens. As I said before, I wanted a vlogging lens, and this lens was basically born for it, at least in my opinion, was reborn for it. And I wanted a vlogging rig, which was X-T4, the 10-24, and then my microphone and a tripod to be vlogging for my other channel, the Sicilians on the Road channel with my wife. And the combination turned out being really good with a couple of caveats. In general, and before getting into the detail, I can say that as of today, X-T4 and 10-24 millimeters f4, the new version, are the best combination for vlogging in the Fujifilm lineup. I've been trying a lot of combination, a lot of potential things, but this is the one that works best. At least if you're not using a gimbal, which I'm not right now. The image quality you can get out of this combination is incredible. The 10-24 is capable of shooting incredibly good shots, and compared with the incredible video quality of the X-T4, you can get really nice footage. The autofocus is super silent, so it's perfect and it's really fast. And the stabilization works pretty nice as well, but both have a couple of caveats that I want to talk to you about. And to do that, let's move outside and let's talk about it in the field. I'm gonna have myself showing how they work in the field. So let's get out.
I have used this lens extensively for vlogging purposes, and I realized that it is fairly usable. It's not the perfect stabilization you would love to have, but at the same time it is usable, and there's a few tricks that I would suggest you if you want to use it. So the first thing that I learned is that if you want to get the best results on an X-T4 especially, you should activate both the IBIS and of course OIS and the digital stabilization as well. That's because even if you lose 10%, like it's a 1.1 crop, the stabilization works effectively. On top of that, I realized that it is probably better not to use the lens at the 10mm mark. You may want to zoom it a little bit to 11, 12. This is going to get you less warpy corners, and it's going to definitely help the overall look of the image. Now I'll show you the difference between the various modes, and in this case I'm going to leave the zoom at 10mm just to let you understand the warpiness that I was talking about. And so that's me walking with let's say mini tripod and the camera without any stabilization on a pretty smooth road. So nothing super fancy, nothing rocky, nothing complicated. Now it's me walking with OIS and IBIS together, helping with the stabilization. And now you see me like I was at the beginning of the video, so all the stabilizations on, including the digital image stabilization. One other thing with this lens is, and I don't know again if it's the lens or the camera, but sometimes the eye focus, the face tracking gets lost when you're vlogging. I vlog with my wife, and I don't know why, even if I'm holding the camera so I'm closer to the camera often picks my wife's face over mine. Not that there is not a good choice if you base your choice on looks, but doesn't make too much sense, because you want the closest face to the camera to be in focus, because it provides a better overall look for the image. You don't want the foreground being bigger and out of focus. So that's a little bit of a complaint. Not a big deal, but something to keep in mind.
So as I showed you, this is not perfect. This combination is not perfect, but again, that's the best combination you can get, especially for vlogging in the Fujifilm lineup. They can still make it better, granted, and I hope that with a firmware update, they can make the X-T4 IBIS a little bit smoother in video, but again, as of now, it's good enough for what I have to do. So in conclusion, I can only say that my overall take on this lens is very positive. I've been using this lens for a long time, and I loved using this lens, and I don't regret buying this lens, because for what I need this lens to do, it does it. It delivers with really good. Now, granted, there's some flaws that I already highlighted, and if those are very important to you, those are deal breakers to you, well, don't buy the lens. If you already know that you're going to get troubles if those are important things for you. But other than that, I can confidently say that I would recommend this lens to anybody who's looking to have a vlogging rig for the Fujifilm system. It really works well. The image quality delivers is really good. I guess that's it. For today, I'm working on a lot of other stuff. Finally, my review of the 18 1.4, the 33 1.4, the Samyang 12mm f2 that I just got, the autofocus version. I just got the XS10, I'm using it, and I'm trying to come up with a good review on that. And there's much more coming into this channel. And if you don't want to miss it, just subscribe. Leave me a thumbs up, just to have the YouTube algorithm show you more of my videos, and also to help me grow the channel, because It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. And the only thing that I'm asking you is just to help me grow the channel. That's it. Ciao, and I'll see you in the next one.